Hello and welcome back to Scale War Machines with a new video for a new year. We've just about recovered from a nasty viral cold that took us out in December, so that's why there weren't that many videos over the festive period. We'll ease ourselves back into it with a video that picks up from our last film. First of all, thanks to everyone who's subscribed to Scale War Machines. Last year we hit 50,000 subscribers and we're really grateful to everyone who takes an interest in this channel and supports it. In our last video we showed the face painting process on a Young Miniatures 1/10 scale resin bust. Lots of you asked in the comments if you could see the rest of the painting process. So in this film we'll cover the painting of the entire uniform and how we finished the bust. As before, we'll largely be using the excellent Vallejo acrylic paint range. In particular you'll see us use their black and white set. It's intended for the medieval period and painting subjects like knights. We've never done this type of colour scheme before, so it'll be interesting to see how we get on and how the set fares. If you want to see what's in the set, we'll link to one of our previous videos. Let's get on with painting this excellent bust. Now this isn't really a how-to because we were trying out the Vallejo black and white set for the first time. In that respect it's not a step-by-step guide, it's just here to show you the stages to complete the rest of the figure. In our case we started off with the chainmail and that involved using a technique called dry brushing. At this stage we're using this reference before moving to another Vallejo model colour reference which was lighter. You just run the brush with very little paint on it over the detail and it leaves a deposit on the highlight. We use the same technique and it gets progressively lighter and more convincing. There's a great range of paints from Vallejo, but they're alcohol based and we use their liquid silver for the final highlights. Again, dry brushed on. You just need to remember that you have to use some sort of alcohol based thinner to clean the paint off the brushes. As you can see from the paper towel, what you do is you brush the paper towel first to get rid of as much paint as you can. And here you can see the result. We used their old gold reference from the same alcohol based paints, and that was used to pick out the brooch detail and the belt buckle on the shield, belt or sling. Next we created a dark wash using the game colour wash references from Vallejo, and that was applied just to accentuate the shadows, mainly on the brooch but a little bit around the figure as well. Off camera the gold thread was painted on the cross and then we airbrushed using a red, the basic shape of the red cross. Any cleanup is very easy using airbrushed thinners. Model colour paints are easy to spray, you just have to use the Vallejo airbrushed thinner. First stage then was to create a darker mix of that base red and tidy everything up, particularly around the thread. Because it's reflective, the gold should still shine through. For the leather shield sling or belt, we simply brushed on a light leathery brown, very gently in thin coats, and let that dry. So we move on to the Vallejo black and white set, and we just followed the instructions starting off with deck tan. Very thin coats, applied around all the white areas of the uniform. It's important not to apply it too thickly at this stage. Another coat was applied. Before concentrating a bit more on the raised parts or the highlights, creases and so on in the tabard or uniform. At this stage we also did the next step in the black colour tutorial, and that was just applied and blended, a bit like you saw with the headdress. Just keep working it with repeated applications, and then concentrate on all the little seams and fine details. At this point it was decided to attach the head, which was done using super glue. And so in effect we've got a figure with sort of blocked out paint, but it's not by any means in its finished state. Still working on the black cape at this stage, we've gone to the next reference in the painting set, which is a much lighter mix that creates your fine creases and highlight details. That's applied with a thinner brush, but blended in the same way. Not forgetting the hair, of course, which gets a very light highlight as it pops through the headscarf. Highlights may appear stark, but as we'll see, they'll get toned down later with various techniques. This bit was a bit disconcerting, where we applied the sort of shadow mix from the set, and you get this sort of kind of yellowy, dirty shadow colour. And that's applied to all the deepest shadow areas. It's a bit unnerving because it's kind of counterintuitive when you're painting white to have a sort of such a yellowy tone, but as you'll see it works quite well when the final highlights are added. That's how it stands at this stage. But then we decided to boldly press on and have faith in the step-by-step tutorial in the set. There you can see how it looks. Now we're applying a bit of the mid-tone highlight shade. This is a mix following the instructions, and it does start to work better, especially around those shadows. At this stage we've gone for the darkest possible shadow mix, so that's a black added essentially to the shadow mix we'd used previously, and that's used to paint around the details. Next step was to use Tamiya's clear range, and their red in particular, to pick out the sort of enamel type effect, shiny effect of the cross within the brooch. Now we've moved on to the highlights. Very thin brush, and we're just picking out the raised crease detail. If you're really sharp-eyed you might have seen some scratches. That's where we've removed hair and debris from the white. Attention is moved to the cross. We quite like the sort of dark leathery look of the red, so we didn't want to go super bright. We just mixed up a lighter version and then applied that, and you can see us just delineating the stitches with a very dark mix. Back to a light mix just to add a bit more highlighting. and that's the overall effect. The belt leather was weathered using a light brown, and you can see that most of the edges have been sort of scratched and highlighted to depict wear and tear. Time now for the first stage and kind of unifying everything and matting it down and making it look a bit less stark. For that we use Vallejo's excellent matte varnish, which you'll see in many of our videos. A light coat is applied over the bust. Might be interesting for you to see what happened with the shield. We started off with the cross as a kind of simple cross as shown on the box art, but then we decided to just go and make a more elaborate cross shape, which was masked using Tamiya masking tape and then sprayed through with a red. The sort of lead flashing or edging was painted using this game colour reference with a couple of thin coats. We haven't included it in the cut, but the white was infilled, leaving this kind of effect here. That was all brush painted, before we turned our attention back to the edging with a lightened version of that base mix for highlights. As you can see, the white is already kind of weathered and looking a bit worn. That's because it was just multiple thin coats. But then we used a product that's often featured in our videos, liquid pigments by Life Colour, and that was stippled on at very low pressure to get sort of spots of dark dirt and debris, and the effect is quite pleasing. Then if you repeat the process with a sort of dusty reference from their Dust and Raymark set, you get a contrast between the dark speckles and spots and the light dust spots that will come. You can see it quite nicely in these images. The advantage is that it's very easy to clean it up with the liquid remover that comes packaged in the sets. We've done a video on these liquid pigments, so check that out if you're interested. Here's how it stands at the moment then. Fairly pleased with it, but one thing that could be done is to tone everything down and make it more dusty. So the liquid pigments are great for that. They were just applied by airbrush. You can apply them by brush or airbrush. Sprayed on, they give a nice dusty effect, and you can concentrate it in all the sort of nooks and crannies and crevices here in the hood of the cape. That replicates kind of sand and dust accumulating. Don't worry if you make a mistake, because everything can be cleaned up with the liquid remover. So it's starting to look a bit less stark. The shield needed some blood, so that was mixed up using game colour wash references before adding a darker shade from the model colour range at the centre of them. And a bit of blood was added to the kind of tear in the white fabric. A few kind of slash marks were applied to the shield, and a bit of dry brushing just to bring out the detail before attaching it with superglue. One nice effect is to show kind of worn or shiny metal, and that's done using a blending pencil and a bit of metallic pigment. Here's how he looks at the moment. Certainly evocative and looks like a warrior. There's a little bit more that can be done to finish him off, and that's a bit more matte varnishing just to tone it all down. What we found was in the black there's a little bit of sheen left from the primer and the Vallejo paints. The Vallejo paints do have a very slight vinyl sheen quality. That's because of their makeup. So it was decided just to add a bit more matte varnish just to make that disappear. Here we are using our side feed Iwata airbrush that will feature in another video soon. That's loaded up and then just gently misted over the model, making sure you miss, if you can, areas where you want shine and satin effects. The key is not to apply it too thickly, just to very gently mist it on, otherwise it can grey everything down a bit too much, and that can be a problem. Just try to identify any area where there's a bit of shine left in the paint and then hit it with a couple of thin coats of the varnish. Because we wanted some areas to be sort of satiny or glossy, we mixed up a kind of slightly shiny brown mix for the leather with a sort of blob of gloss varnish. And here it is. This is the completed bust. The Young's Miniatures sculpt is fantastic as always. We're pretty happy with the face and the beard. The outfit was our first attempt at these sort of medieval paint schemes, and it's not as successful as the face, but we thought we'd share it with you anyway. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you found it helpful, you could give us a Facebook like over on our Facebook page. Or why not subscribe to the channel and click the bell and you'll be notified whenever we release a video. Stay tuned for our next video and see you then. Bye.
Subscribe for our latest videos.